Hi, everyone. I'm Representative Joella Hoy. We've got my colleague, Representative Susan Ruiz here. Dinah is traveling for a class. She's on her way to Boston. Brandon wasn't feeling well. So it's going to be the two of us. You'll get a good House perspective of the session this go around. And we are fresh out of session. We got home at 3 a.m. yesterday. So we're ready to tell you what happened and answer your questions about this wild session. I mean, it was a lot of people are saying that was their worst one yet. So, but here we are, still around to keep up the good fight. And I'd also like to introduce my intern for the session, Paulo Diaz Padilla. Thanks for being here. He's a KU student, and glad that he still wants to hang around and learn more about this crazy process that we have in the Kansas legislature. It's never boring, is it?
No, never.
So we had adjourned for first adjournment at the end of March, and then came back for our veto session this week. And the governor vetoed. I didn't even count, but we had a lot of vetoes, including around 30 or so line item vetoes from the budget. So that is what the main focus was this week, is taking up veto overrides, which does take some time, especially on the ones where they're close. And we had one call of the House where we have to stay in our seats for over an hour on one bill till they were able to keep flipping people to be able to override. And we did take up a few bills, a few conference committee reports at the end as well. So there are going to be some new things for the governor to consider. But anything that passed that she vetoes at this point, I believe will just be dead. There's not a plan for us to go back into session at this point. So we did adjourn sine die. If we have to go back for something, it would need to be a special session. So there are some things outstanding that may not actually go into law, depending on the governor's decision on those. So after first adjournment, there were well over 50 bills that her staff and her office had to quickly go through, because they have 10 days once they get to her desk to decide if they want to veto it or have it go into law. So that is a really crazy process to have that happening all at once. And then those of us on the legislative side, if your rankings or leadership or just have a passion for or against something, trying to work with them and give them a heads up on what to look for, or what might be a problem, or what we really like. So a lot of communicating there. But it's so chaotic to do it this way and rush everything like that, because there have been there was a bill last year, as well as we already had one this year, where the legislative intent, they made a mistake, something was missed, which is for the revisers to make so few mistakes under this pressure is incredible. But there are some things that sometimes we have to go back and fix mistakes because of this process that we are decided we have to rush everything so quickly. Since I'm appropriations, should I start off just doing some budget, and then you can do some? The budget, it did get signed into law with a number of line item vetoes, most of which did get overridden. But the things I liked about the budget, we had some good funding in there for social services, strong public safety, and transportation funding. The big issue is our school funding. The governor's budget included $50 million increase to cover excess costs for special education to our school districts. The legislature funded only $6 million of that. And in order to keep our commitment to what we said we were going to fund for excess costs of special education, we needed to have had at least $24.6 million in there. So we're really falling short, and it's sending our school districts scrambling for the next school year. I've seen Olathe say that they may have to increase class sizes to reduce staff. Blue Valley's looking at cutting their 5th grade orchestra program, and I'm honestly not sure yet what Shawnee Mission, how they're addressing it, because it's going to be about $8 to $11 million short of what the schools were expecting to come to them this year. So for the next school year. So it's just an unfortunate thing. We did everything we could to try to get this funding in there, and that's just where it ended up, unfortunately. The Senate had tried to cut out the mental health intervention team funding for our schools. Thankfully, the governor vetoed that cut and it was sustained. But it got scary because the Republican went up to make the motion to override that veto. Upon my understanding that he actually supports the program, I more or less yelled at him from my seat, just like, no, don't do this. And we talked real quick. I was able to go to the well and explain that the veto actually was a veto of a cut. So this veto restored the funding for that program. So he withdrew the motion and we saved the mental health funding for schools, which has been, I wish we were able to reach more school districts. It doesn't cover every school district, but it is an effective program and it is saving lives. So we want to keep as much funding for mental health in the budget that we can.
It was set for 16 million and you got down to what?
10. So this restored a $6 million, that veto restored a $6 million cut to that program. So they've maintained their 16 million in funding for that. And at this point, any cuts to the schools that we can prevent is helpful for the special ed funding shortage as well. So anytime we can step in and save that funding, it's good. They don't have to backfill anything or just outright in their programming. We were successful in some of the elections, stopping some of the attacks on our voting rights. That has been a big concern this session. I guess a couple more things that on the budget, there was a proviso in there that would have required KDHE to use the CDC vaccine language or vaccine recommendations for the next school year, which was done as their recommendations came outside of the regular CDC panel review. And what this would have done is forced KDHE to change school vaccine requirements to remove Hep A, Hep B, and meningococcal vaccines. But then once we looked deeper into it with the revisor, it would have actually added the HPV vaccine to school requirements, which I think for some of those that if they're trying to appeal to a more anti-vax crowd, I don't think they would be happy to add a new vaccine. So anyway, that was overridden in the House, but then the Senate ended up sustaining it. So the plan will move forward to use the recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics instead of what the CDC has come up with, which I think, meningitis vaccines in a school setting, very important to have that. And I'm trying to think what other budget issues. This is, the governor has said the worst budget that the legislature's ever sent her. This was the big kind of interesting one. So the legislature, when we did our pay increases and had a committee put that all together, it built in a 4.4% raise every year. And the governor wasn't able to just line item out the raise. She had to veto the entire legislative operations budget for us. And the reason that she did that is because for the legislators, we got the 4.4%, and then the legislative staff and research and revisers got a 10% increase, but they only gave the executive branch employees, which is most of our state employees, a 1% raise. And the governor was very furious with that. So she defunded the legislature, which was restored, of course, but it was just I think a smart political move to call out how egregious it is that we're giving one branch these large raises while the majority of our state employees are only going to get a 1% raise, when we've seen this year already from February to March inflation up a percent to be 3% increase this year. It was unacceptable. And they bundled that with another thing that the legislature put in for themselves, is saying that we can park in whatever state parking lots we want to whenever and never get towed. So we get special treatment while you all don't. So that's just silly, but it happened, and that's going to be law. And I guess if we go to KU games, we get to park wherever we want. I don't know. That's crazy to me why we would do that, but we did. One thing I did,
Garage?
yeah, does that mean that doesn't matter which spot we park in anymore?
Oh.
We have assigned parking. Maybe we gotta go park in Chai spot. I can park wherever I want.
That's right.
Uh, that's just stupid. Why do we do that? One thing when you're on the super minority, the things you fight for and can accomplish through the budget process, very small. But the one thing I did fight to get in the budget was $800,000 for the Topeka Correctional Facility to have a nursery, so that for women who are incarcerated, if they have 18 months or less sentence and they're pregnant or have a baby while there, that they don't have to be separated. And there's some other requirements that have to have a GED, high school equivalent, because, and the 18 months reason is so that it's the child is young enough not to really have memories in there. But that's something that those of us in juvenile justice and corrections have been working on for a few years, and this is going to help the department make it a really nice space for that purpose. So that's a really good thing in there with a lot of really bad things, but all in all, the budget was it was just a lot of really underfunding and unnecessary cutting of things that we didn't have to do.
You want to talk about property or wait?
Why don't you give what you want to say about your stuff, and then we can see what everyone wants to hear about.
Property taxes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great
End
topic
of
for
the
us
session, yeah.
to talk about. So I'm on more of the social services because I'm also a social worker. So I'm in those kind of committees, social services budget, and then health and human services committee, and I'm also on the veterans and military. None of the bills that we passed for health and human services were vetoed, even though we asked for one specific one to be vetoed, and the governor did not do it. And social services budget, we don't have bills that come out of that, but we make recommendations for all the social services that are funded through the state. We make recommendations as to how much they can get. Then appropriations decides whether they can have that or not, but I have to say everything that we asked for out of that social services budget committee came through. So so real happy about that. Veterans and military, there isn't a lot that we can do, again, because they're federally funded, regulated, but so we do look for ways that we can help. So there was a push last session for they call them sharks, but I'm not going to call them sharks. They are veterans who have come together and formed for-profit agencies, and their purpose is to help veterans get their disability. Now, veterans can get that free already through veteran services and through there are some specific lawyers that have been certified through the VA. They do not charge, and they will help you with that. Plus, they will also represent you if there's something that goes awry with your application, and you might need a lawyer, you might need some support in getting through that system. Those two entities will help you through the entire process. Since Agent Orange was declared a disability, or having the symptoms from Agent Orange, having that exposure, these companies, these agencies have blossomed all over the U.S., trying to get a cut of that disability check that the veteran would get. So what they would get is up on top. So if the veteran, whatever, let's say they got 100% disability on something, and they would then get a lump. You get a lump check, and then every month you start getting a check. But you get a first. I can't remember how far back they go back, but you get a lump sum. It's that first sum or that first lump check that these veteran agencies they're called benefits agencies, veteran benefits. Veteran benefits agencies, they will take the first whatever amount that you have agreed to. So let's say you get 10,000, they may end up with 5,000 of that, and so that is so wrong for so many reasons. So anyway, they've been trying to come into Kansas. Supposedly they're already here and helping some veterans, but they're not certified through the state. They're not known through the Secretary of State as they should be. And there's no regulations. There are no state regulations around that. So they proposed a bill that would allow them to fully function within the state with not a whole lot of regulations. So there were some veterans on the committee that were very strong. The chair and the vice chair very strongly wanted that bill. There's a lot of political maneuvering that was going on. Half of that committee, at least, less than half of that committee, we did not want that, and we said we've got a proposal. We have a counter proposal. Here's some things that we think, some more guardrails, and we wanted to put a cap as to how much that agency could actually get. They didn't want it. Said, okay, fine. Bring it to the floor. So it came to the floor and we killed it. We have now killed this bill 3 times. It tried to come back a 4th time, and we managed to kill it again. The legislature is made up of a lot of veterans on both sides of the aisle. And so veterans were coming up and saying, this is not good. And in other states, they've been banned. Louisiana has banned them. California's banned them. But we were all willing to say, let's come together, put some more guardrails in there, and then have a go at it. And then you have to come back and report to this committee every single year. Not willing to do that. So fine, then we killed it. So what they did then, as always happens towards the end, the Senate will then bundle it with 2 or 3 other bills. They're all good except the one. So that's what they did to this. One bill, and it was in us Democrats, we rarely get a bill that can go through. Rarely. And one of our our ranking member, Virgil Weigel from Topeka, he had a bill and it passed. And it even passed on the floor the first time. And it was to create a kiosk in the visitor center where you could look up your family member that is from Kansas, went into the military and maybe died, in action or passed away for whatever reason. You could look that up and their bio could get pulled up. Really cool thing. And we said, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. Everybody was for it. And they put that one with the poison one. And then there's a second one. It had to do with preferential employment, asking employers, not mandating, but asking employers to give preferential treatment to veterans when they look at employment. So if you had a bunch of applicants for one job, that you not necessarily give it to the veteran, but that you really take a look and have them up at the top of your list. That was fine. Everybody was okay with that. But then they put it with the veterans benefit, and that was no good. And so Virgil, and I know how difficult it was for him to go to the floor and say that he didn't even mention that his bill was even in there, but we all knew it. A lot of people knew it. And he had to, and he didn't have to. He felt like he had to speak against the whole package of bills because of that one bill. And so it didn't pass. We killed it. And they did try it again, this was, my days on. It would have been like Friday in the afternoon. They tried a maneuver and Virgil didn't fall for it.
No, he wouldn't sign our form, and then delayed it.
Yeah, he says, well, they told me if I don't sign this, the whole bill is dead. And I said, we already killed it, so let it die. So, yeah, he didn't do that. He didn't do it, and so anyway, this bill is dead again. Everyone is willing to reconsider if they'll put all the guardrails in the next session. The one bill that I was disappointed that the governor did not veto, and that was the Kratom bill. And it was not a separate bill on Kratom as it should have been. It was a bill every year when the feds change any drugs into a different classification. So you've got classification 1 through 4. So for instance, marijuana, fentanyl, all the ones that they deem really dangerous are all in that class 1. When you put something in class 1, you also restrict, if not totally are unable to get any kind of federal funding for any research for that. So this is why we haven't really been able to have robust research on cannabis, because it's a class 1. So every year in the Health and Human Services Committee, the Board of Pharmacy comes to us with a bill saying the feds are moving these drugs. It's always a long list of drugs that are moving from this class to this class. And every state then has to move it on their state level. Well, the AG and the KBI felt like kratom needed to go into a class 1. We never really had a discussion about that. And so there's enough people in the committee that were like, we don't even know what this is. What is it? And we got a lot of misinformation. We got a lot of, I felt like we're back in chemistry class, because all these chemicals names were coming at us. We're going, bottom line, what does it do? What is it? Nobody could really answer it. Not even the Board of Pharmacy could really answer it. So we didn't pass it through our committee. It didn't make it to the floor, but it finally did, came to the floor, and it passed. But it wasn't veto proof passed. The votes were not veto proof. And I everybody else really heard from probably 50 people at least who told me that they use kratom. So I had to do a lot of research on my own, talking to advocates, talking to people that use kratom, to find out that there's 3 different forms that you can get a hold of right now. The one that gets all of the attention is the 7-OH, because the 7-OH, and it's a synthetic form of kratom. Kratom is a tree. It's a tree that is, and the powder from that tree has been used for centuries for pain management. So a synthetic form is 7-OH, and kids use it, young people use it, everybody uses it to try to get high. The problem is you don't know how much you're going to use, you don't know how much it's going to take for you to get high, and kids in particular are overdosing by a lot. I mean, there's like 200 and some odd people in Kansas that have overdosed. However, there's over 180,000 Kansans using the powder form, which is not a synthetic, it is a natural form, and using it successfully to treat pain management and a lot of other diseases. There's another derivative called metrogynin, and that one is another form of kratom. It comes from kratom. It's a derivative, another synthetic, but that one is called alkaloid. It's a liquid. But nobody talked about the plant form, so we were like, okay, we don't want to tell anybody this, because maybe this bill will go through and everybody will forget. There's a plant form over here that people might still be able to get. So we begged the governor. I mean, we had Republicans on our side wanting to make sure that we did not move that kratom into a class 1, because they had family members, or they have family members who wanted to try kratom, and know that as soon as it's classified into classification 1, it's totally illegal. You can still get it in Missouri for a while, because they're trying to do the same thing in Missouri. You can get it in Oklahoma and in Nebraska. But those 2 states have gone through the process of regulating it, which is what everybody wants. Even the people that are currently using kratom, they want it regulated. And we had a bill that was sitting there in 2025 that would have helped us start going down that road of actually regulating it. But nobody wanted to bring that one to the floor. Nobody wanted to have a hearing on it in our committee. So we're going to revive it. And there's a group of us, we're already talking about, okay, look, if we all come back, we're going to revive that one, and we're going to try and do a better job with it and see if we can regulate it. So, we're going to really try to do that. The governor, for whatever reason, decided not to veto it. It came, so it came to us on the floor again, and it passed again, but it's still not veto proof. We could have, if she would have vetoed it, we could have sustained it easily. but she didn't go that route. So anyway, that's real sad news. She's like 180,000 people who are using it, and you can't imagine how people are using it to treat for all kinds of things that I had never ever thought that something like this would be possible to be used to treat neurological disorders, sleep disorders, uh, chronic thoughts of suicide, depression, all it just a whole list of disorders that people are able to use it. It does not get rid of the symptoms, but it makes it manageable that people now are able to go to work. They're able to function. They can get out of bed. They can take a shower. They can take care of their kids. All kinds of things like that. So we have to do a better job with it this next session and see if we can really try to regulate it.
I will make a comment about that because I was one of the 4 Democrats who did support the ban, and I completely agree with Susan that we need to regulate it. Back since my very first session, we've had kratom regulation bills and to raise the age to 21 because there is no age to be able to buy this. You can walk into gas stations. There's a kratom shop within walkable distance to my house, and a kid can go in and buy these little gummies. And they're also since they're not regulated at all. There's no testing. We don't know what could be in these. They could say it's pure kratom, it's from the leaf, but we don't know. It's coming from other countries. They get a lot of it from China. So we had tried both my first 2 terms to get that regulation bill to the floor, and we never could. And really, what I mainly wanted was to raise the age, and we have not been able to do that. And in the meantime, while working on those things, a friend of mine from high school, her son, shortly after high school graduation, passed away in his sleep, and his toxicology report, the only thing in his system was kratom. And so that terrified me as a parent because I had no idea even what this was. And so for me, with my son going into high school, I'm glad that kids won't be able to walk in and buy this, but absolutely would support coming back and figuring out a way to test the products, raise the age, make it make sense. I definitely support legalizing cannabis, and I think that's probably safer than some of these substances that come along with kratom. But my vote was just purely selfish reasons of I don't want my kid to be able to go in and buy this stuff. So it was complicated, and there were bipartisan votes on both sides of that, and I much would have preferred regulation, and I have no idea why, because Representative Epley was really behind the regulation. I have no idea why we couldn't get this to the floor, but ultimately I think this is what we were able to get, and that's why I took that opportunity to get it off the shelf for kids. And unfortunately, we had to do the same for adults, which I didn't find to be ideal, but that's where I'm coming from on it.
Epley's original bill, and Rivas reintroduced it.
Yeah.
So he's gonna reintroduce it again.
Yeah. But
Get back.
I would support moving it back to that. That would be my preference.
Yeah, we need regulation.
But that's just how some of these things roll at the end, and it just gets unfortunate that we can't get the best outcome of what most people would have preferred. But there's a number of examples on that. We had another one that one of our caucus members was working with Johnson County Mental Health to be able to have liability waived for like FFLs, people selling firearms, if they get in a firearm hold agreement with an individual, if they're in crisis or for whatever reason. And so Johnson County Mental Health works with a couple gun stores in the area. If they have a client who is in crisis, or just like we need to temporarily remove firearms since we don't have a red flag law or anything, they work with their client in these gun shops to have them safely secure their firearms for them for the time period where until they can get back up on their feet. And they would like to have more, but what they're hearing from from the gun sales folks is that they're really worried about the liability on that. So that was the background of this bill. Then the NRA and Senate Republicans come along and put in a bill to legalize silencers and short barrel shotguns, and so that bill ended up. The governor signed that when I was working with her to try to veto that one. So I know how you feel on that side of it. I'm disappointed she signed it because there are active attempts. These devices are regulated through the National Firearms Act of 1934, which has been in place since 1934. Because these things, taking a 12 gauge shotgun shell, shortening the barrel, that makes things much more dangerous. And sadly, a lot of Columbine shooting involved sawed-off shotguns, and so there are a lot of attempts by younger people that they it's happened with the Santa Fe high school shooting. They want to kind of mimic what those shooters did, and they idealize these weapons. They've also been dangerous for law enforcement because most of those are involved with criminal activity. But what's happening is in the Seventh Circuit, there was a lawsuit against short barrel rifles, but the Supreme Court refused to take that up, and the opinion still applies that the short barrel rifles are not firearms as defined by Bruin. So the states can, in fact, prohibit these weapons, as well as if you are in possession of one, like you can get a stamp, you can get an enhanced background check, fingerprinted, and still have silencers, short barrel rifles, shotguns. This also includes like pen guns and cane guns and just some of the more like what you would say typical like old timey gangsters type firearms that would have been around in 1934 when this came about. But what the ultimate goal is now, our attorney general will want to get a lawsuit against one of these here in the 10th Circuit and hopefully to get a different opinion. But the ultimate goal, the main thing that is regulated under this, the NFA, is fully automatic machine guns. So that's what the ultimate goal is, to try to get an opinion that we can legalize those. So that's why I was opposed to it. It's unfortunate when they put something that we like in with something we really don't. But so my caucus was conflicted on that one, similar to the Kratom situation, but the governor did sign that. So I'm a little nervous what's going to happen next with that. But the other thing that if you are in the market for silencers and short barrel shotguns, please know that federally they are still regulated. In the One Big Beautiful bill, they removed the $200 tax stamp to get them, but you still have to have an enhanced background check. Otherwise, the penalty is up to 10 years in prison and up to $250,000 fine. It is a felony charge, so don't think that just because Kansas did it that you can go around having these wherever you want. You got to have the proper paperwork still.
Are those short barrels, so they're easier to hide? In the back?
Well, that's the other
Or
scary
back?
thing is that then you can conceal a shotgun, which especially concealed in a closed space like that, you could now will be able to carry those into this building concealed. Yeah, they're it also they don't have the shoulder like.
Mm-hmm.
The ballistic, they go everywhere. Like they're not easy to like aim.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I'd be able
Yeah.
to. I would like fall over. So I won't be having one with me anywhere anytime soon.
I mean, yeah, you get thrown.
But those are just examples of the things that we could do something good, but we decide to also do something bad. What questions? Oh, I want to walk you through kind of how we ended up, and then we'll take some questions. So why were we there until 2 a.m.? The House wrapped up our work. We were ready for the Senate had passed our adjournment resolution. So every year it flips back if the adjournment resolution starts in the House or the Senate. This year it started in the Senate. They had passed it. So we're all getting ready, our hugs, and we're all friends again, and we're so yay. And then we're like, we don't have the resolution, and our clerk is like, they haven't brought it over. And we're like, okay. And so the speaker's like, where's the resolution? And the Senate says, we're not going to give it to you because you didn't pass our little bill we wanted on the constitutional amendment on the terrible property tax bill that would have actually it decreased for some, raised property taxes for others, and would have raised up all of our vehicle property taxes. So that was being held hostage. So we're like looking through the Constitution, looking at everything, and how can we get ourselves adjourned here? Because we're ready to go home and we don't want to vote on anything else coming over from the Senate. So we realized we're just gonna have to wait. The House was gonna come up with their own resolution, but which takes time. So we are just standing there like, I'm like, let's go to the Senate. And so we all start marching out, going over to the Senate floor. I think every House Democrat was along the wall, and we didn't know what they were working on. We were just trying to show up and get the adjournment resolution. They're actually voting on their property tax thing, and Dinah's going, "What?" Because this is a constitutional amendment, so you have to say, what does a yes vote mean? What does a no vote mean? And Dinah's like, show me in here where it says the language of what does a yes vote mean, what does a no vote mean? And they're like, we can't tell you that. They don't have, it's not in there. And she's like, what are we doing? And so then we're all like, give us the adjournment
That was
resolution.
around midnight.
That was after midnight. So then all of a sudden the House Republicans start filing in, and so we're like, yeah, we're more in camaraderie. And then I noticed this morning that Senator Thompson was like, the House Democrats came in to try to stop property tax relief, and then the House Republicans came in and had a standoff with them, and we're like, that is a misread of the situation. We were like playing off each other, the House Democrats and House Republicans. So we were frustrated with the Senate that they would not let us adjourn sine die. So they ended up beating us out. They adjourned before we did, but we were able to. And another unfortunate thing, we were waiting for a bill. So counties have to get approval, not Johnson County because we're charter, but counties have to get approval for sales tax ballot initiatives. And we had, I think, 6 counties that we waited till the last minute to approve their sales tax ballot measures, and the Senate took out one of the counties where our appropriations chair lives, and then 2 others.
Yeah, they took out 3.
Because of people that voted against their ballot measure for this retaliatory. And we also had a bill this session to remove that requirement that counties have to come to us to ask permission to put this on their ballots for their county voters. And that didn't go through. And so Democrats, I was going back and forth because I sit next to Tom Sawyer, our ranking on tax. I was like, well, I hate to punish the 3 that made it through because of this. But the other thing is this really incentivizes more legislators to come together to pass that bill next year to make it so that you don't have to come to us for permission to do these measures. So that ended up going down, except for the poor legislators, that the House members where it was their counties. They're the only ones who voted for that. Our chair of appropriations made a really compelling argument to stop it because of the terrible political games that were played to take those counties out that needed those ballot measures. That was just despicable. So we stood with him on that one. But sadly now none of them get theirs.
And you rarely see Waymasters, the chair of appropriations, get really livid, really
He was
mad and
emotional.
angry. He was.
Yeah. So we were like, what do? We don't know what to do here. But so sadly none of them will get their ballot sales tax this year. But we do need to redo how we do that. That's unfair that they have to ask us. What? That's just ridiculous. So we finally voted that down, got our adjournment resolution, and that was that.
We killed the property tax.
Yeah. So the constitutional amendments would be a disaster for our communities, our cities and counties. And we can't be voting for things that don't even have the correct ballot language in it. And the House and Senate just have very different views of property tax reform. So I just don't think the legislature is going to be able to do much on it. It's going to be at the local level. What do you want to know? What have you been tracking that you want to know where it ended up?
What's your thought on the actual real consequences of the sting video on the unlawful approach to officers?
So we had a bill that had a HALO law in it, which is Florida did. So this the way that our bill was written, it was law enforcement, state, federal, local, as well as first responders, firefighters, EMTs. So this says you have to stay 25 feet back, which I think has major consequences for people helping in car accidents and fires and other things, because it is a pretty strict penalty if you do interfere. but mainly this was a bill to so that people can't film ICE interventions. So I mean, there were some components, some things that are beneficial to law enforcement that make sense, but I think that there are major ramifications to potential family members and things of trying to help in emergency situations because it doesn't apply just to law enforcement. It's all public health and safety. I'm sure you want to make comments here.
They didn't even ask for it. Law enforcement didn't ask for it.
No.
They bundled it into a bill that came to us from Wichita. I think it was Wichita. Yeah, Sheriff Easter from Wichita. Well, yeah, they're the ones. The AG and again KBI and the lobbyists for the sheriff's department, Ed Klump. They proposed the bill, this one bill that would help sheriff's department agree to a contract. It's called the 287G, I think is what it is, agreement with Homeland Security. So what that does is that it allows sheriff departments to detain a person under that detainer. And so if their name pops up, so here's an example. You run a stop sign. You get stopped. The police can you have to do something that requires fingerprinting. So whatever crime you do, if you get the fingerprinting, that fingerprinting goes through a database to the FBI. And so if you're flagged through the FBI, which is also together with Homeland Security, then a flag comes up, and so then they will detain you and wait for ICE to pick you up. Problem is ICE you don't have a timeline as to how long they can pick you up. But in the bill, it said that they could only hold you for 48 hours. The AG successfully amended the bill, and so now it's unlimited amount of time. And so what we were told is that if you committed a crime, got fingerprinted, that you would have to serve, you would have to go through the court, and if you get sentenced to 30 days in jail, you have to go through that first, then Homeland Security can then come and pick you up. There's a lot of flaws with that database. Number one, there are a lot of people, citizens that are being, for whatever reason, their identity gets all mixed up, and they're being detained, and they're here in the country legally, or they're in a certain phase of their immigration status, and they can work and live here legally, but they still get detained. And there's thousands of lawsuits that have happened since 2025 because of Homeland Security and ICE coming into our communities. Well, so if you have this agreement, the carrot to that agreement is that if you get the agreement, you can then also ask for funding. And that funding comes from Homeland Security, and it comes straight to your department. So if you are a smaller community, Western Kansas, Frontier, Kansas, and you have a really small department, and your county, is barely able to give you the funds to operate, that carrot seems pretty nice. So that's why counties actually do that. It's not because they really want to detain people. They want the money that comes with it. And the money, I don't know, there's a whole range of funds that these counties can get. What this bill does, however, is now bypasses your county commissioners. So like in Johnson County commissioners, they manage the sheriff's budget. Every department has to come to the county commissioners and say, this is how much we need for next year's budget. County commissioners, they negotiate, they say yes or no, or tweak it here, tweak it there, whatever. This bill will now allow a sheriff's department to get into that contract, get funds, and totally bypass the county commissioners. And cool thing about it to them is that if there's a lawsuit, they don't have to pay it. Homeland Security is saying, we're not backing you up with that. Your county is liable for that.
We're not in one of those agreements right now, though. I don't know.
No, there's like a handful of sheriff departments in the state that have done that. It's easy for them to get out of that contract. It's really easy. All they have to do is on the sheriff's letterhead, because we asked them, on the sheriff letterhead, all they have to do is say, we want out. And then they get out of that. What really has spurred these bills to come through to different states is because Homeland Security has been hit with so many lawsuits that they can't fund it, and they're barely funding themselves and not have the money to also fund all the other sheriff departments within the US. So that's why they said, oh, by the way, I know you have a detainer with us, but now you're responsible for your own funding for your lawsuits. And your county commission has no say so.
Well, and on top of that, so the state prison system, we have agreements with the federal government already for undocumented individuals who commit crimes that the state will incarcerate those individuals, and then the federal government's supposed to reimburse. They cut that $400,000 already from our state budget. The feds, they're not reimbursing state taxpayers for those expenses, and two, they're not coming to get those individuals. That's a federal crime, and they're not helping out with it. So I don't have good faith that the DHS is going to be sending any money to these small counties. They're not doing their end of the bargain anyway. So it's just nastiness. That's what that is.
So they tacked in this 25 feet.
I was gonna say, I'm a lot more worried about the 25 feet thing
Wait,
because
yeah. So I think for like, because I always think like logistically, how's this going to work? Like, what if you're trying to run up to a burning vehicle and they say get back? I think with the EMS and stuff, it's going to be a little bit better. Well, yeah.
So on the 25 feet though, and reading your legislative session was such a fiasco this year.
It was a fiasco.
And then the governor didn't. She should have vetoed everything, and I think the Republicans and Democrats would have been happy. But so the 25 feet is so. What if law enforcement comes in, and they're closing the 25 feet? It doesn't address that. It doesn't address if it's private property.
Mm-hmm.
If you come into my house, that 25 feet is just so.
And it doesn't address the judicial warrants versus the administrative warrants.
Totally objective.
Right, and the state or so. But I don't understand the legislative session in its totality. Everybody says it's the worst budget ever. The Republicans are saying that. They were hoping that it'd be vetoed, and it wasn't. So it's kind of what's the right adverb and adjective? Befuddling. When the Republicans wanted to see the budget be vetoed, but it wasn't.
Why'd they pass it then?
Yeah.
It was barely passed.
Right.
I mean, they could have helped us take it down.
Exactly.
And that's what. So I weighed back and forth in my head, should this whole thing get vetoed? The risk that happens then is that if they couldn't get an agreement by the end of this, when we knew we were going to be signing, and then we come back, and then what else can happen? I mean, it's just it's like the longer we're there, the more bad stuff we do. I think she could have thrown a veto on the whole thing. That would have been fine, because oddly enough, last year we passed a bill where if the legislature doesn't come to an agreement, if we don't pass a budget, it just reverts to last year's budget, which was a better budget than what we had now. But that's never happened. We don't know the functionality of how it will all work with caseloads and other things. But the other crazy thing is we're sine die, and we don't get consensus revenue estimates till Wednesday. So we don't know our caseloads. We don't know everything we need to fund, and we don't do an omnibus bill anymore, which we've passed a lot of legislation with fiscal notes that are not funded in the budget. So we're also increasing agency costs without the funding. And a lot of what happened last year after we did it that way, when the agencies came to request the funding for those things, pretty much everyone except the Attorney General was told no. Did he get his, 16 FTEs he asked for? Yeah. But most of the other agencies are like, you make do. Oh, and by the way, you get another 1.5% across the board cut on top of your one last year. So I think the other side of it now, because a lot of the little punishments that were added in there isn't going to be this administration. There's going to be a new administration. Why wouldn't you want to set them up with a budget for success, especially if you're the Republicans hoping it's a Republican? Why wouldn't you want to set the first few months of your administration off with the funding it needs to continue? I mean, Governor Kelly and her administration, all her secretaries, they inherited core functions that were not functioning at all, that were upside down. DCF, the correction system, underfunded schools, and we somehow through COVID and the pandemic are ending on a fairly good note.
Yeah.
So why would they want to set the next person up to maintain the just basic level of services that we're getting used to now? Makes no sense.
Did she give a justification why she didn't veto the budget and all the other bad legislation?
I'm surmising what I think she probably decided it's too risky, but I don't know.
Do you know?
I don't know, but I can only imagine that if it was me, I would really struggle with it because the some of the things that are in the budget, yeah, SNAP for one, the CHIP funding, for the health for kids, all of the funding that we asked for all of the waivers to try to cut down on the intellectual disability, the wait list to try to keep chipping away and bringing that down, all of that would be gone.
What was there
And
in
all
last
those
year's budget, though?
agencies, you know,
It was in last year's budget, so it would have been better.
I'm sorry, what?
All that was in last year's budget, which we would have reverted, or you would have reverted back to.
I don't, would it
Well,
revert?
So one difference on the social services is we got an additional 12.1 million for SNAP administrative costs that are a requirement now by the federal government to work on our error rates for dispensing these services. But that budget bill we passed has like can't remember if it's 300 or 400 million kind of leeway for the Secretary of Administration to direct some additional funds in the meantime, as well as it adjusts I think 3% for caseloads. So it could have worked. It could have been there. They could have been able to do this administrative stuff. We'll never know now.
Yeah, I think the other risk is the fact that even if we had a special session, if we ended up having to do that, you open up, it's like a whole new legislature. And with the kind of leadership that we have, that's just dangerous. We did enough damage. They would come up with so much more.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to risk that.
But weren't they even saying though they were hoping that
Well, I
Specifically
think
talking
that's rank
about
and file
budgets.
people saying that. I don't think it's the leadership.
I never heard any Republicans say that they wanted us to veto, that wanted her to veto the
Croft.
entire. I never heard Croft say Croft did that.
Oh, well,
That
he should have
wanted to-
asked for a veto then.
Yeah, he never did. He never went to the well to talk about it and ask for it. His folks would have followed him.
I don't think anyone would have been overly upset, but what happens next, I think, scared everybody. But again, if there is a belief that you really don't like the budget, you should not vote for the budget. And then we would have had to start over, and we would have had the time. If that wouldn't have passed the floor, they would have had to go back to conference. What were the demands? A lot of the Republicans voting against the budget, they wanted more special education funding, and then a lot of the Topeka folks, they wanted the raises for their constituents in the budget. Those were I really think the two things that could have been done that would have gotten a lot more support.
Yep.
And we just had so many provisos this year. We had the diversity, equity, inclusion for college campuses. It wasn't enough to say you can't have DEI programming. Now they want to sift through and do a legislative post audit on curricula, on the books that professors are asking grown adult students to read. It's silly. But they are getting an audit on this and withholding $2.5 million from each of the universities until they prove that they don't have diversity, equity, inclusion, or critical race theory curricula that are required in any of the courses to graduate. So that's just the kind of stuff we're dealing with in the proviso language. That is basically a way that they use to get legislation that they could never pass on the floor on its own lumped into a budget. So that's really irritating part of the budgeting process, and we're trying to figure out how to fund our agencies, and then we have all this random language in there. They had some abortion language in there saying that no funding can go to hospitals and institutions that perform abortions, and KU Med's like, help us, that's going to be terrible. So they came up with some compromise language. That stuff doesn't belong in our budget bill. That's policy.
What are all these little, so, what are they even called? All these payments to friends? For an example, the former president of Emporia State getting $50,000 again. And you keep seeing those. How did those?
So what he's talking about is that the Emporia State president who just retired, they gave him a contract to come look through all of our all of our university budgets and look for waste, fraud, and abuse, and we're going to cut all this out. It's the DEI stuff's a part of that as well. Another thing that we did, so the bill passed, but the funding was not. The governor vetoed it, and the Senate did not sustain the funding for this as these fiscal integrity auditors that the Senate and the House would each get one, but it's a political appointee that would have access to all of our data in the state system. That includes our bank account numbers, our social security numbers, our dates of birth, all of this information that they want their political appointee to have. So that funding was not included in the budget. So I don't know if they'll be able to move ahead with these positions or not. But we've seen an increase in these types of things because our legislative research, they can figure this stuff out. The agencies can send you the information over how much stuff costs. Why do you need to have that access to our private data? Not just of the employees, but of anyone who's using any state services. Motor vehicle. I mean, it's just, we tried to get some confidentiality stuff around there. It just wasn't successful. So the bill is out there. These positions can exist, but I don't know where they'll come up with the funding for it because the governor cut that out.
So, but it was approved though, weren't they?
The Emporia State guys are like, he's hired and he's there. But they loved it so much that they wanted to put these in statute, and they want to pay. But here's the thing: originally, the fiscal note was like $250,000 for one, but not now that's for two. So they were going to try to cut the salary, and I was like, okay, you get what you pay for on these things. The highest level, even the Secretary of Administration doesn't have access to this data. The highest level people, the few that do, they make really good money, and they should, because they have to have high ethics and training. So you cut the pay, you hire some, political staffer that you've had on for a while and give them, you get what you pay for, and that is a big risk, and that's why these Doge bros gave our data out unknowingly. I don't think they did it on purpose, but at the federal level, all this Doge stuff, they could not have been trusted with this data. So we're going to now do that at the state level. No, thank you.
So, and then back to the sharks. So was that approved or disapproved?
Disapproved.
So they
We
have,
killed it 3 times.
okay.
Yeah.
But what about the access to the information that they still have, they're able to get to veterans within the state?
No, they can't. Only if you give them permission. So you have to agree to work with them.
Well, see, and they're
Like-
getting it. That's the thing, they're getting it.
Well, yeah, because the veterans are giving it to them.
Well, we're getting it through the VA somehow. And
Well,
some you were,
Are you talking about like when a veteran already gets their disability
yes,
and
they're getting access to
yeah,
that somehow.
yeah. So
Without-
when you work with these folks, they don't what's their language? They don't really support you through the entire process. They help you. They upload all the documents that you need, and then they have you click on enter, and it goes to the VA. But they don't. The VA doesn't come back and tell them whether you got approved or not for your disability. So what they've been doing is making phone calls and trying to get some of that information, because they don't get paid unless you get a disability, and they don't know you got it until you tell
But
them.
they're getting that somehow.
I know, and it's illegal. It's totally illegal. That's why they've been banned in certain states.
And that lump sum you were talking about, it goes back to the date that the veteran filed. So
And like they wouldn't tell us how much they actually get. You know, like what's the range? Well, it depends. You know, we kept getting the runaround with that and said, yeah, we're not going to trust you.
was there any progress on the tax-free status for retirees?
No. That did not go through. And I think the proposal was only if he had 100% disability, I think.
I'm talking about retirees now. So I thought that you.
Are you talking about just retired folks?
Yeah,
in general or
military retirees.
Yeah.
Having tax-free status or tax-free on the retirement,
Is that
military retirement.
Is that the one? There was a bill that the veteran would have to designate where their home state
Yeah,
was.
we ended
right?
the income tax for military active. It's not veterans though. It's active.
It is active. It's active.
Yeah.
What
That's
about retirees though?
No.
No.
Okay.
We're getting close to wrap up. Happy to answer some more questions. Just want to make sure you end on PBM.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a question?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I had a couple. What about the Good Samaritan law in regards to this one that was just passed?
So
It
we-
looks like to me there's a conflict.
Well, we do have
Oh, yeah.
protections for that,
Okay.
and we
Oh,
don't know how that would.
So there's
Work.
a lot of lawsuits out there just waiting to happen. right?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay.
Absolutely.
and there isn't.
That'll happen
There
soon.
is a provision that talks about if you're warned and asked to get back, but it does not require the warning. That's the other thing
No,
that's
it does
terrible.
not.
So they could just, I didn't know that this was even an active police thing. Like I rolled up one night to this police officer. I thought they were looking for a dog. It looked to me like they were like down looking for a dog, and I had seen a dog running around. So I'm like, "Are you guys looking for a dog?" And they're like, "No, you crazy lady." And then they're like, "The dog's not in there with you, is it?" And I was like, "No," but. So I'm like, they could have charged me for rolling up on this active scene. Who knows what they were doing? Thought they were looking for a dog that was running down the street that right by.
As far as I could tell from reading the coverage I've read so far, it's completely up to the.
Yes,
the
it is up
officer's
to them.
discretion.
So if now there is a provision that talks about if you're asked to leave the scene and you don't, but that is not a requirement that you get that warning first. And that makes me very nervous because I am definitely the type of person that's going to run up and try to help with something. And then, like, what is this lady doing? So, you got to have your tape measure.
This
The other-
was ICE agents as well.
Yes,
Oh,
Just-
yes. So that's the other thing is that it's up to their discretion on what is 25 feet. So it's not like they're going to come back and like, I'm out there with my phone trying to video ICE. And then they're like, you were within the 25 feet. I could be 26 feet. It's like they're not going to get a tape measure out and see that I'm 25 feet back. So they can make that claim that reasonably. That guy was in my neighborhood. That same guy was at
I have
87
lots of pictures of
and
that guy.
he yelled at my constituents that were videoing. He was yelling, "Make America safe again."
That dude's from Shawnee, we think.
Yeah. So that's be sure you have your tape measure out because it doesn't necessarily even have to be 25 feet. It is whatever is reasonable, what they think is 25 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
So be very careful.
Mr. Mohawk also has those.
One of the, now, maybe I misheard, but you said classes that are required for degree
Mhm.
have to eliminate all this from them. What if it's an elective?
So it does.
Professors say, I want you to read this paper or this book. Even if it's an elective, they cannot do that.
Right. I mean that,
Can
and
they
it's
just mention that it even exists, and if their students want to be well-rounded, they might consider it?
right. That's what they're going toward, and I think this is opening us up to like what we saw in Oklahoma, where a student wrote a paper that she wrote in 30 minutes that was not evidence based or didn't even cite any of the text that she was referencing, and she complained and then got the professor fired. I mean, got the professor fired. I think this is what they're going for. Meanwhile, we have all the Charlie Kirk freedom of speech stuff for campuses, and it's like, but then we're gonna the legislature is gonna somehow regulate books that professors are requiring for students. This is
And now kids can't go out and march.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
I did that when I was in high school. We walked out all the time.
we've had a really weird free speech
It's something
versus
you
not
need
free
to do.
speech thing. There, you're ready.
There you go.
Get the GoPro on the end of that thing, and you can just go.
When I was in committee, I was like, I'm not a good judge of distance at all. I mean,
Me neither.
I'm really bad about it. I can tell you north, south, east.
Pull up the Measure app.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So
If
They were
you
saying-
use it,
some of the folks would say, well, it's like 3 tables. Well, okay, but 3 tables is 6 feet.
It's like 3 car lengths. Right foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 car lengths.
I don't know. Oh, I'm too.
Well, and what if you're like,
But it is because of ice, and it's
Yeah.
you know, and I have filmed that idiot before, and here in Lenexa, he said he stopped me. I was coming. I was more than 25 feet away from him. Now that I know what 25 feet looks like, and he's like this, so I stopped, and so he pulled out his phone to take a picture of me, and I just I posed for him. Took out my phone. You know, our phones all have telephoto lenses. I mean, we can zero in. I got that guy's face really well.
well, and normal policing has the body cams. The ICE folks do not have that requirement. So that's the other, like, it makes sense that people are trying to document these things.
It's a lawsuit went
like I said, there's an app on at least all the Apple devices that's built in.
To the camera?
Yeah, well, it's a separate app you pull up and you say, okay, like, yeah, so here, see how it gets that pointer there?
Uh-huh.
And then you tap the plus button, and then you,
It'll show you how to be 25 feet back.
yeah, and then see how it measures.
Oh, yeah, you can see the line.
But looking at it, it doesn't define the 25 feet.
Yeah,
Is it
does-
25 feet from the scene, or is it 25 feet from an officer that's coming to you?
Well,
So
exactly.
it's
We don't know.
Well, yeah, what if they're approaching me and then I have to run away from the
That's
law
what I'm saying,
enforcement
yeah.
because now I'm in an active scene? That's a very good point. I did not.
Excuse me, Oscar, you're too close.
I think it's
25.
bad. It's not good.
whoever's writing it is.
AI. A lot of these bills, the Republicans are using AI, and then they hand it over to these poor revisers that are like, oh boy, this is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm
But
serious. They're
it's-
using AI.
Yeah, and that's how they found. So in testimony we heard in the interims, one of the legislators was testifying that the word diversity was used over 800 times in KU's stuff, and it's like, well, they also have science, and there could be biodiversity thing. Like, it's just saying how many times diversity is found on the website, and you're like, you don't know what the context is of the word diversity, and also.
Genius.
Gonna need clarification. Are you banning the word diversity as well as actual diversity?
So one of the good things that we did sustain a veto on
was preventing driver's licenses to state your citizenship on it. So when if it went into law, the next time you go and renew your license, or when you get your new license for the first time, you have to produce whether you're a citizen or not. And
That was.
it was going to be included on our driver's license. So when you go and vote, and you try to vote, and you're a non-citizen, then they don't let you vote. Or they would give you a provisional, right? I think they would give you a provisional ballot.
Well, you can't vote if you're a non-citizen. So it's just that you don't have to show like a birth certificate and passport in order to get your driver's license. Like, they don't mark it on there.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking though, but if it would help people, because we keep hearing about people being detained because their citizenship's in question.
Yeah.
If they hit something like that, it might ease. But I
In-
don't know the ramifications.
In my untrusting ways here, I don't trust that. I had this long conversation with a guy who does IT stuff and does a lot of AI things, and we're talking about how it's almost impossible. Well, it is impossible to really tell how old you are when you're looking at an app. And if an app says, "Are you 18?" Well, anybody can say yes.
Yeah.
There's no way to really verify that. And this guy was saying, "Well, why don't we use a driver's license?" I went, "Oh, hell no."
Yeah.
Because our driver's license, if we allow even this citizen thing to go on, what's to stop the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? When our driver's license, all it's really good for, the intent was to make sure that you can drive. You made the requirements. You passed your test. Yeah. And so it gives you the ability to drive. It should not have all of this other crap on there. So I'm very leery of them
Yeah.
using even that on there.
Well,
Oh,
because
you
I
know
think it was beyond voting too. It's law enforcement. I mean, they're just
Yeah, it's beyond.
No reason we need that on our driver's license.
Yeah, and what's scary is that a lot of age verification laws are going to be going into effect for internet services, and the most common form of age verification that's out there right now is uploading your an image of your driver's license.
Yes.
yes.
Which is what Proctor wanted on one of the bills.
Well, we had a bill that sounded good for age verification for apps, but the bill was brought to us by Meta. They want to develop all this stuff and they want access to all of our data. Really, the best thing I think for age verification, and this makes some of my conservative colleagues very nervous, but they don't like the virtual IDs. But there's a way to do it where the Department of Revenue, when you get issued your driver's license, and we've had a bill to do this in transportation last year, you can choose whether or not you also want a virtual ID. And then what that does, if you would opt into that, so if there's something where you have to prove your age and put in your driver's license, all you have to do is put in your virtual ID and it will give them the information about you that it needs. If it's to something you have to be 21, all they need is your date of birth. They do not need your name. They do not need your driver's license number. They do not need your address. All they need is your date of birth. That's what it would show. So I think this is a really good idea, but the virtual stuff, it does freak out some of the more conservative folks that don't want the government knowing anything. But I'm like, but this actually, the people you're handing it over to gives them less of your data because it only, and because you could use it in person as well, whatever, but then it only gives what they need from you. Some stuff does need your driver's license number. But we're not there yet. All right. Anything else? It was a whirlwind. I'm sure we'll be able to talk about more next month, and we'll kind of know more of some of these final vetoes that could come out. But yeah, my seatmate, he's been around the legislature off and on for a couple of decades, and he's like, I think this was just as bad as 2014. He's like, we've really done a lot of bad stuff this year. So that feels sad, but our little super minority, we fought hard and we disagreed on things too, but we stuck together and we did what we could, and we're gonna try
Thanks to our
Try again.
leadership team. Our leadership team was solid, and and when our leader, I'm saying Brandon's not here today, but I know why he's tired and he's sick.
Yes.
He's endured a lot because he's taken some brunt of the anger from the Speaker of the House, and he stood firm against him. And when he asked us to do hard things, he gave us the rationale for it, and he kept his cool. He was strong. He was confident, and everybody said, "We got you back. We got your back." And so, okay, we can do it. We may look stupid or whatever, but we'll do it. We'll stick together. And we did, and it's hard. 39 people with all 39 different personalities. It's hard sometimes to keep us together. We all have our own opinions about stuff.
Yes.
And
That's good.
as the whip, I would say we ask and we talk through and try to get the results, but we're just not like the Republicans in the way we have our own independent thoughts, and we're able to disagree on some of these things and make it through.
Don't threaten to me.
Well,
and Hawkins told that to Brandon. He told Brandon, "Well, make people change their votes." He goes, "We don't do that."
No.
we're convincing though.
No threats. Just
Thanks all for coming, and I'll see you next month. Will be Mother's Day, so we do plan to be here for our Mother's Day town hall, and hanging in there, getting and already setting the groundwork for campaigns and breaking the supermajority so that we don't have another miserable session.
I do think